Would you like to fire a cannon repeatedly from a very large distance and deal respectable damage turn after turn? Well, I've got just the Inventor class archetype for you. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka Thraben here for another Pathfinder 2nd Edition video, and welcome to my Munitions Master guide. I am really excited for this one. I spent a lot of time preparing for this video, and I think it will show in the quality of this little performance you're about to see. Let's do the businessy stuff before I get started. This is coming from Battlecry, and I just want to thank Paizo for giving me an early release copy of this. I have had a lot of fun in reading through this, and I have much more to say that is not going to make it into this video. So if you enjoy this one, please subscribe to support more content like this in the future. I am looking to dedicate more time to Pathfinder and Starfinder. Make that financially viable for me, and the content will keep flowing. A YouTube membership is the easiest way to do that, and you're going to gain early access to my videos. My YouTube members had early access guides for every single Starfinder 2nd Edition class. It was like 7 videos they got early access to all at the same time. So you will get tangible benefits for supporting me financially. And if you want to discuss funding a video or some sort of sponsorship opportunity because you run something like a dice company, philgallagher11@gmail.com. Let's talk. So here's kind of our breakdown of today. First, I'm going to show you what this Munitions Master class archetype has to offer. And then we're going to do a bunch of comparison to spells and other Inventor options to see what the damage potential is actually like here. And then we are going to go into some very, very important rules minutia that you might not understand if you don't watch this video. So if you go, I like what I'm seeing here, I want to play this, please, 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 watch that section. If you don't watch anything else, watch that one. There's some weird stuff going on here, and it is not immediately obvious unless you go digging into tags. And at the end, I'm going to have a conclusion for you, and then we're actually going to do another bonus section after the conclusion where I offer you some generic Inventor advice, as I think my next character is going to be an Inventor. Hence why I dug into this so heavily for this video. So, let's get into it. Let's take a look at our canon. So, the Munitions Master is a class archetype. So to take this, you need to be an Inventor to start with. And when you take this, you are giving up your 2nd level class feat to take the Munitions Master dedication. So in terms of power level, you are 100% giving up 1 class feat in order to take this. And in exchange, you should get something of an appropriate power level to balance for missing out on that class feat. And a class archetype will often change some of the features that you get from your class, or very importantly in this case, the level at which you get some of your features. This is the Light Mortar innovation that you are going to get instead of your weapon, armor, or construct innovation that a normal Inventor is going to get. So it is going to have a hardness value that is going to scale up over time, and it is a very respectable amount of hardness. This thing is going to be hard to break. At level 1, it has 5 hardness. And I believe at level 5, it scales up to 10 hardness. So this thing is going to be chonky. It's not going to be particularly fast. It only has a speed of 20 feet, and you're going to move along with it. And it is going to be dealing 2d6 bludgeoning damage in a 10-foot burst on a reflex save. And it has a range increment of 120 feet, and we're going to go into some of these details and what exactly they mean as this video is going to go on. And for our newer players here, just to make sure you understand this, this is what a 10-foot burst looks like. It is this cross shape. So you, at level 1, are dealing 2d6 bludgeoning damage to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 squares. Like, that is a pretty respectable area for an early level AoE option that is going to be repeatable. Talking about some of the stats here, you are going to get an additional damage die every 4 levels starting at 5th level. So while you start at 2d6, you are going to go up to 3d6 damage when you hit 5th level. And even though it says this is a DC 15 reflex save in the stat block, in reality, this is going to use your class DC. And your class DC is going to scale up faster than normal. Normally, an Inventor increases their class DC to Expert at 9th level. You are going to do that at 7th level instead. So you are basically going to have the scaling proficiency like a spellcaster might. And as you're going to see in a minute, we are going to be comparing what you are doing to a spellcaster for a very large portion of this video. You're not going to be playing out in the traditional Inventor play pattern. Now, notably, your overdrive damage can apply to this roll. So at level 1 here, you're dealing 2d6 damage, but on a critical success on your overdrive, you are also adding your full intelligence modifier. So that actually might be 2d6 plus 4 to that giant area at level 1. And just like any other innovation, there are going to be modifications you can do. Most notably, one of these allows you to deploy your innovation as a free action, which feels like a really big deal in terms of the action economy save here. Otherwise, at the beginning of combat, you're going to have to spend an action kind of getting this out and setting it up, which you probably don't want to do. So, on paper, the intended sequence is 3 actions to fire your innovation. You need to aim it, you need to load it, and then you need to launch it. Now, a couple of things here. Number 1, with the aim action, once you aim your innovation at a spot, it remains aimed at that spot until you aim it somewhere else. So, on future turns, if you already have it aimed at the place that you want to fire, you can just load and then launch, and it becomes 2 actions instead of 3. And there's also a different way that it can be 2 actions instead of 3, and that is with your engineer's efficiency. So for 1 action, you aim and then either load or launch. You can't load and launch for 1 action, but you can do 2 of the 3 of these for 1 action, meaning you do the other one with your second action. So effectively speaking, to fire your innovation in that cool 10-foot burst, it takes 2 actions. And getting into some minutia now, you'll see that there is crew 1 here. That is the maximum number of people that can be crewing this. So in most instances, you are the only person crewing this. So it's not like you can get someone else to help you fire this. And another note here is that your innovation and other siege weapons can only be fired once per round. Not per turn, per round. So if our innovation is eating up 2 of our actions on our turn to do our big thing, that leaves us with 1 action for other stuff. So on your first turn, you might deploy and then fire. Or if you have the modification to just do that as a free action, you might enter overdrive with 1 action and then use your other 2 actions to go ahead and fire. There's a lot more to go into with rules text here, but this is enough to kind of get us going and start off our analysis. Hello, Editor Phil from the future here. I make one tiny mistake in the upcoming section. I'm off by literally 1 damage for one thing. So I forgot that the Expert Overdrive feature that you get at level 3 also adds 1 additional damage to Overdrive. So when I talk about the 5th level damage for the innovation, my numbers are going to be off by 1 for the Overdrive damage that I add. So I'm going to be taking a look at the Inventor here, specifically at 5th level, which I think is a good point for a number of different reasons. 1, you have 3rd level spell slots at this time if you are a spellcaster. 2, most of your cantrips have ranked up either because you have ranked up a level +1 twice or a level +2 once. And this is also the point where your mortar is going to get its first damage die increase. Also, conveniently, my next campaign is starting at level 5, so the numbers worked for me personally very, very well. We're going to start out here by imagining that we are level 5, and we're going to kind of compare what our mortar is doing versus other spells that we could be casting at 5th level, which means 3rd rank cantrips or 3rd rank spells. And for the purpose of this analysis, I'm going to pretend that we live in a very happy world where things have gone well and we have critically succeeded on our check for overdrive, meaning that we are adding the full 4 damage that we might on an overdrive rather than the 2 that we might get on a standard success. So we're going to kind of take a look at this in best case scenarios. If you want to know what it normally is going to look like, many times it will be +2 instead. So our mortars have gained 1 additional damage die, so they are now dealing 3d6 plus 4, again, with a critical success on overdrive, in a 120-foot range, asterisk there too, in a 10-foot burst. Now, you can fire outside of the 120-foot range, however, you start getting into range increment penalties, which will reduce your AC, so we're going to pretend that the range is just 120 feet, which for the vast majority of battle maps should be the entire field or very, very close to it. Now, we have, I think, 2 reasonable cantrips to compare here. We have Electric Arc, which is sort of the gold standard of cantrips, and then we have Caustic Blast, which is a 30-foot range, but a 5-foot burst rather than a 10-foot burst. So if we compare what the mortar is doing to cantrips, this is like a super cantrip, right? We are out damaging Electric Arc, we are out damaging Caustic Blast, we are outranging them by a vast, vast distance, and we are also probably, at least theoretically, dealing damage to more targets at the same time, or at least covering more area. But let's compare it to a staple level 3 spell, Fireball, which just deals 6d6 damage, as opposed to the 3d6 plus 4 that we are getting out of our mortar. Now, Fireball beats us to crap in terms of range, and also in terms of area. So in terms of like quick conclusions here, from just kind of glancing at this, we're consistently better than cantrips in just about every way possible. We have more damage, we have more range, we have more area. But in terms of the max rank spell slot that is doing a similar thing, we're not quite keeping up. Again, clearly better than a cantrip, clearly worse than a max rank spell. And in considering spells here, I picked kind of a basic spell. As spell levels start going up, the riders, the additional effects, the status effects that go with them start getting crazier. So let's say that instead of Fireball, I picked Cave Fangs, which only has a 60-foot range instead of the 500-foot range of Fireball, but it can make difficult terrain. So you could fire off a Cave Fangs, deal a respectable amount of damage, and also create difficult terrain in a large area. Well, now all of a sudden the mortars maybe don't look quite as good. And as spell levels go up and up and up and up, the spells are going to keep doing cooler things, whereas the only thing that is going to maybe go up on your mortars is going to be their damage. There are some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, I think spells, as you level up more and more and more, are going to outpace mortars. At least your highest rank spell slots. This is very much an AoE-centric dedication. So clearly there has to be something for when you need to deal with one enemy, right? And that is what Focused Fire is for. This is a 4th level feat that allows you, instead of launching at that big 10-foot burst, you launch at a single square, and then you deal 1 additional damage die. So we should see, well, what does this look like versus other Focused Fire spells that you might be doing as a full-on caster? So again, we're going to assume that you have critically succeeded on your overdrive check and go ahead and add the full 4 overdrive damage. You are on par with a 3-action force barrage in terms of damage. And that's one that I pick because that's something I often find myself relying on as a spellcaster. When you are in a boss encounter and enemies are hard to hit, and maybe you're not initially sure what save to target, Force Barrage is just a very safe action to take. And so the full-on 3-action, send all 6 missiles, that is going to deal about 19 damage. Now, admittedly, in the sake of doing a fair comparison here, Force Barrage always hits, and there is no chance of this number going up or down, right? Whereas on a save, the monster could critically succeed or critically fail, and these numbers could be much swingier in one direction or the other. So I think the better comparison is probably to the 2-action striker spells that you might be using. And Thunder Strike is the common version, and Sudden Bolt is the uncommon version. Thunder Strike deals a very respectable 3d12 plus 3d4 damage, split between electricity and sonic, and Sudden Bolt is 5d12 electricity. So as you can see here, even with the additional damage die, there is still this pretty big gap between what the mortar would be doing and what a dedicated top-level spell slot would be doing. And specifically, I am very intentionally saying top-level spell slot here. If you were to cast Thunder Strike from a second-level spell slot instead, its average damage is going to go down by 9. And where does that put it? Exactly at the damage that we would be expecting from the mortar, assuming a critical success on Overdrive. So you are absolutely on target with spell rank -1 damage, but you are below top max level slots, both in terms of AoE potential and in terms of single target potential. And notably, focused fire is not something that continues to scale up. Many times these sorts of feats will say something like, at 9th level this increases to 2 die, at 17th level this increases to 3 die, or something like that. And we don't actually get that from focused fire. Our damage die are going to continue to go up, and there will be other class features like offensive boost that cause our damage to go up. But if your goal is to blast, and to blast really hard, this might not be what you're looking for. You might just want to play a spellcaster. But if you are already choosing to play an Inventor, and you don't want to play a spellcaster, you're not actually competing versus other spellcasters, right? So you don't care how you line up versus a spellcaster, you like what the Inventor is bringing to the table. So maybe our comparison should be, how is this competing against the other 3 innovations that you could get by being a normal Inventor and not taking this class archetype? So, vastly oversimplifying, the armor innovation is giving you +1 to AC and some resistances. The weapon innovation does not offer much except a very juicy, unstable megaton strike that can hit for massive damage. The Construct Companion offers you an additional HP pool and the very, very unique ability to do multiple 2-action activities in a turn. You can do a 2-action activity, then you can spend your final action to command your Construct Companion, who then gets 2 actions. So it is one of the few ways in the game to do 2-action activities in a turn without being hasted or anything like that. And the Summoner specifically has class design restrictions involving the tandem actions that very specifically keep you from doing 2-action activities. As a note here, the Megaton Strike feat, which a lot of inventors like to take because extra damage die are cool, right, is explicitly not compatible with the Light Mortar. The text of Megaton Strike specifically calls out that you have an armor weapon or construct innovation. So that's not on the table here. There is also the hefty damage dealer Megavolt that many inventors are going to take at level 6. So let's go back to this chart and think about how Megavolt and the unstable Megavolt compare to what we are already doing. The the regular Megavolt honestly kind of sucks. It is 3d4 damage in a 20-foot line. that is below electric arc damage, and kind of noticeably so. The unstable Megavolt, however, changes the die to D12s, changes the range to a 60-foot line instead. So now you are looking at a damage of 19.5. And in case you aren't super familiar with the Inventor, unstable actions have a chance of destabilizing your invention and making it so that you can't use further unstable actions. And it is a relatively tough check. I believe it is a DC 15 flat check, meaning that in most fights you only get to use one unstable action unless you're a little bit lucky. So if we view Megavolt as something you could keep doing, if you could keep doing that unstable Megavolt because you were super lucky, yes, it does outdamage the mortar. But if you are comparing the mortar, which you can do every turn, to the Megavolt, which you can do every turn, like, the mortar is nearly double the damage of Megavolt at a much greater range, and it is probably easier to hit the stuff that you want to hit with it versus Megavolt at a simple 20-foot line. That's not all that great. Something Pathfinder mentions a lot in passing in his videos is that sometimes the average does not tell the whole story. So let's think about the minimum and the maximum damage that are possible with a mortar strike and a Megavolt, an unstable Megavolt, that is. The mortar is dealing a minimum of 7 damage, again, assuming critical success on overdrive. And the Megavolt is doing a minimum of 3. So the mortar has a higher floor in terms of damage. If you just need to, guaranteed deal a, respectable amount of damage, the mortar is very, very reliable. However, when you look at the maximum damage that these things are capable of rolling, the Megavolt has a much higher ceiling on the pain that it is capable of inflicting. So why am I mentioning this specifically? We're talking about being at level 5. Let's assume that you're fighting a bunch of level -2 enemies. They might have somewhere on the order of 30 HP. I think the minimum for that level is like 31. I think it's 31 to 36 is low HP for a level -2 here. And that means that the mortar dealing its maximum damage is not actually killing one of those enemies, whereas the Megavolt dealing its maximum damage is killing one of those enemies. So this Megavolt is potentially going to kill things when the mortar wouldn't. But the mortar, over 2 rounds, might be very, very successful at killing a crowd in a way that 2 Megavolts might not. Because if you did the first Megavolt unstable and failed your check, then that second Megavolt, are you even in range to use that properly? You might not be. So this Light Mortar looks to be rock solid, consistent damage, but it maybe lacks the high upside of either some of the higher potential Inventor actions or higher level spell slots. And now we're going to get into the nitty gritty even more than we already have. All right, here it comes. The rules minutia, and we need to think about what your turn cycles actually look like, because it's much more complicated than you might initially think. So let's start right here. The launch ability. This has the attack trait, which is very, very important. Now, when I first read this, I went, this has the attack trait. That doesn't matter. I will go and make an attack, and then I will fire this off. And this uses a DC. It does not use an attack roll, so I don't care that this has the attack trait. And then I got into some of the minutia of the siege mechanics. And let's take a look right here. So, the weapons range increment penalty applies to the launch DC. I alluded to this earlier. You have 120-foot range to fire your Light Mortar, but you can fire outside of that if you are willing to take a penalty to your launch DC, which again shouldn't come up very much. But let's read this full sentence now. The weapons range increment penalty applies to the launch DC, as does your multiple attack penalty. Ooh. So, as a reminder, if you have made one strike action, or maybe let's say one attack action already, your multiple attack penalty is -5 normally. So that means that if you want to take an attack first and then launch, by my reading of this, that is a -5 to your launch DC. And I have sent this text to a couple of people trying to go like, am I wrong? Am I reading this wrong? Please tell me I am reading this wrong. And every time I have gotten back the same response of, oh no, yeah, I think you're right. I think that is how that works. And so when I was initially drawing up my builds for this, I went, this is crazy. So we have overdrive. We're going to apply that overdrive damage from a long distance with some sort of short bow or maybe even a long bow here, since we probably don't care about volley. And then we're going to use our other two actions to fire our innovation. And that is just not going to work out. So in either order, if we attack first, our launch DC is terrible. If we launch first, our attack accuracy is terrible. So this is just not going to work out well in terms of optimizing your offense. And generally speaking, I am not a very big fan of taking actions when I have map. I try to find other things to do to optimize my chance of success of doing something. So if we are not making strikes with our third actions, what are we doing? And I think Wrapped in Smoke is the key to this. This is a 4th level feat that I initially overlooked until I really started getting into the builds. So you create a cloud of smoke in a 5-foot emanation centered on your innovation, so that's going to include you as well, which lasts for 1 minute. All creatures and objects within the smoke become concealed, and those outside the smoke become concealed to those within. Now, why is this so nice here? Well, normally, when you specifically target a creature that is concealed, you have to make a DC 5 flat check, meaning there is a chance of just kind of automatic failure if you're unlucky. Well, guess what you aren't doing? You aren't actually attacking someone. You're not making an attack roll. You are targeting an area. And so, effectively speaking, this is 1 action, 1 minute, 1-sided concealment, which is very powerful. Now, with focused fire, your blast is limited to a targeted square, not a targeted creature, not a targeted object, a targeted square. So by my reading of that, you could even focused fire on one particular enemy in air quotes without making this flat check, which makes Wrapped in Smoke much better than I thought it was initially. But in terms of offense, you are not really weaponizing your action economy very well. On your first turn, you are doing something that adds to your damage by using your overdrive action, which you might end up repeating a few times until you get a critical success, as that critical success might be very, very meaningful over the course of a battle versus a regular success. You have other third actions you can do. You can deploy. You can move your siege engine. You're probably not moving very far. Again, 20 feet on that. You're going to use Wrapped in Smoke. You're probably not using your third action effectively for damage output. And this is weird to me because this dedication, this class archetype, is giving you multiple different ways to become quickened and cheat the action economy on firing your mortar. But why? Like, what are you supposed to do with those other actions? With other inventors, I feel like it is very clear how they can be using their turn. You move up to something, you do a massive unstable megaton strike. You strike, you explode. You strike, you megavolt. Preferably unstably. You attack, you command your construct companion. Maybe you command your construct companion with 2 actions even to give them 3 actions if you have something cool they want to do. Or you do some combination of attack, raise shield, tamper, move, searing restoration, explosive leap. But like, which one of these things are going to be useful on your construct companion? Sorry, your Munitions Master Inventor. Like, are you raising a shield when you are, preferably 50 plus feet away from your enemy? You're not tampering. You're not next to anyone. You're hopefully not getting hit. Hopefully you don't need to searing restoration. Are you going to explosive leap and leave behind your mortar? I think a ton of these single action things that are available to inventors don't apply to the munitions master very well. And I think this range on this class is going to be both a blessing and a curse. You are frequently going to be out of range to demoralize foes. Dirty Trick requires reach. Tamper requires reach. And I think even reasonable justification for the aid action might be off the table a lot of time. Quote here, similarly, a character usually needs to be next to their ally or foe to aid the ally in attacking the foe. And I think the aid action is something where a little bit of GM wiggle room is okay. If, you've got a bard 30 feet away who says, I want to try to use performance and I want to really distract this guy, I think I would go, yeah, okay, go ahead, make your roll. Can you do that same thing reasonably with an inventor? And be like, hey, I want to, say that I'm going to fire my mortar at this guy. Well, mechanically speaking, you can only fire that thing once a round. There's a reload time. I don't know if that would be reasonable, right? And so building a munitions master, I think actually becomes incredibly complicated. I think there are some very cool feats here. I think there are some very cool abilities here. I am normally the sort of person who I can sit down, I can build something and go, this is approximately what this should look like. This is approximately how this should play out. And this is one of those times where after spending hours and hours and hours poring over this, I'm still like, I feel like there is a piece of the puzzle missing somewhere. And I'm just going to say this now. If you have thoughts, I am super excited to read them. Get down in those comments. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to my conclusion, but don't tune out yet. I still have a lot to say, and I think there's going to be a lot of valuable information in this section. This isn't just a summary. To me, the Munitions Master feels a lot like a kineticist. You are capable of blasting basically forever. You can go on all day. Your peaks aren't as high as that of spellcasters, but you are effectively not running out of your resources. And your mortar is tanky enough that I don't expect it to be destroyed under normal circumstances. Maybe you get to late game campaign and some BBEG is just like, I'm going to disintegrate this. This thing is annoying as shit. But outside of something like that, I don't expect your mortar to go down very frequently. But, and I think this is my biggest complaint here, I don't think your turns are going to have a lot of agency or variety. And by agency, I mean, can you adapt to the situation and use your skill and leverage your knowledge to make your turns better? I think you are going to very frequently just be doing 2 total actions to fire off your siege engine, and then you find something else to round out your turn, and that's that. So what do I think this is great for? I think this is amazing to hand to a new player. You tell them, you get to blast things with a giant cannon, and they don't need to understand a lot of abilities, and they don't need to understand a lot of skill actions, and they're not going to go down because they're going to be very far away from everyone else, and they just get to have fun kind of watching the battle unfold and blasting with a pretty strong cannon. Simple turn cycles. You're going to have a great out of combat character because you have all of these skill increases from intelligence. I think this is great for a new player. I also think this is great if you are playing in a low difficulty setting. If you are going to regularly see battle maps with a lot of creatures, and a lot of them are low level, you are going to have so much fun blowing things up with this. You're going to have a repeatable AoE effect with an aggressively scaling DC. I think you're going to have a good time. But now I want to talk about the Inventor a little bit. And this image here is from YouTuber Lex Chexon, who made a really, really fantastic Pathfinder 2e tier list, I think a little over a year ago. And I want to draw attention to the Inventor bar, which is this one right here. There's an S class above this that is not visible on this image. And essentially their argument was that the Inventor can be a terrible class or an amazing class, and both has to do with your unstable actions. So when you use your unstable actions, your character punches way above your curve temporarily. But then when you don't have access to your unstable actions, especially if you fail your first DC 15 flat check, you lose access to a ton of abilities simultaneously. Because once you have failed at this check, you can't use any of your unstable actions anymore. Meaning, if you're lucky and you run hot, like, you are capable of some of the craziest things in the game. And when you run poorly, your character is going to fall really flat. And the character has double variance built in because you have variance associated with whether or not you succeed on your overdrive check. If you critically fail that one, you don't get to try again. And you have variance associated with your unstable actions. On top of the normal variance associated with a d20 rolling game, this means that you are going to be incredibly swingy. And your innovation choice might impact kind of where you fall on this spectrum. And the Inventor was one of the lowest scoring, if not the lowest scoring, in air quotes, class on this tier list. And if you are just trying to have a good time playing an Inventor, maybe this is one of the times where you don't want to follow everything 100% raw. Raw being rules as written. And if you read feedback on the Inventor, a lot of people feel like it falls a little bit short. And you might feel that way about this class archetype too. You might say, this is so close to everything I wanted out of a character, but some of this stuff I don't like. Like, I don't like how the multiple attack penalty is supposedly going to affect my DC. That feels super weird. That feels wrong to me. And so maybe you tweak something so you enjoy this just a little bit more. I am normally very, very good with just kind of playing the game as is, and I like testing things as is. Because a lot of times you might think that you're the smartest person in the room and that you understand everything that's going on, but in reality, the people at Paizo have tested this stuff way more than you, and they understand way more than balance than you do. And so a lot of times I don't really advocate for making changes to the game. And I often discourage people from doing homebrew, especially if they are new to the system. But the Inventor is one of the few times where I'm like, hey, if you want to do this a little differently, like, I will work with you as the GM. Let's make sure you have a good time. And so there are some people who say, hey, if you take a bunch of feats with the unstable trait, I will let you make a separate unstable roll for each one. Does it really make sense if your explosive leap breaks that you then can't command your construct to explode anymore? That doesn't really make sense to me. So why shouldn't they have a separate roll? Or I have some people who treat them like focus points, where if you have 3 different unstable actions, you can have 3 different focus points. So if you want to play this, if you like most of what you have heard in this video, and you just kind of feel like the math is coming up a little bit short, or you think you're just not quite going to have fun, this is a time where maybe you deviate from raw a little bit, and you recognize, I am here to have a good time. I don't think I can have a good time and keep up with my party members at this super optimized table if I play this. Like, yeah, maybe you make some slight changes to raw here. I do want to say that overall, my impression of the Munitions Master is largely positive. I do not think this is a good fit for every table. I do not think this is a good fit for every player, but I think there are going to be times and circumstances where this can really shine, and I hope that I have given you a lot to think about, both in terms of the math itself and the play experience. And if you get in there and you do some testing with this, get down in the comments, let me know what you thought of it, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!